Alrighty, so I switched to using the DJI Air 3 professionally about 30 days ago. And I want to talk about that overall experience and if I plan to continue using this professionally and making this my daily driver. Let's get started. All right, so let me go ahead and put a disclaimer out there that I'm a real estate videographer, photographer. So the reasons for me switching to this and why I can use this may be different than yours. If you're somebody that does inspections or something like that and requires a larger sensor, your reasons or your motivation behind using the Mavic 3 or any other drone may be different. So just keep in mind that this is not a one-size-fits-all explanation. So like I said, I'm a real estate videographer, photographer. Switched to using this 30 days ago, and overall I have to say the experience has been pretty damn good. Now I've been using the Mavic 3 Pro for the past, I want to say 2.5 months or so. Before that I used the Mavic 3 almost exclusively for an entire year, and all of those drones have been fantastic. It was only up until the Mavic 3 Pro came out that I started realizing that having a third lens, that 3x lens, became incredibly useful. I was able to get different perspectives, showcase different viewpoints, and give my videos a unique flair. I never thought that I would care about a zoom lens so much, but having that extra zoom lens really did make a difference. So when they brought that same lens to the Air 3, I was pretty excited about it. And I was pleased to see that it actually functioned a little bit better than the Mavic 3 Pro. Let me explain. So the gimbal on the Air 3 is a lot smaller, and because it's a lot smaller, it doesn't have to worry too much about wind or motor overloading. With the Mavic 3, the gimbal being so large, sometimes it's a little bit more sensitive to certain movements. You have to be a little bit more careful, a lot smoother on the sticks. It's less forgiving in certain elements or situations. If there's winds above, I would say 25 miles per hour, you could run the risk of having those micro vibrations in the camera. This was something I've battled quite frequently, and it's something that has required a lot of post-stabilization with the Mavic 3 Pro, but with the Air 3, I don't have those micro vibrations. I get nice, crisp, clean footage out of the Air 3 with minimal post modification, I would say. So that was the one major reason why. Let's talk about my second reason why. So the second reason why is the gamma. So what I mean by gamma, and I'm not talking about radiation, I'm talking about the log footage. So this shoots in D-Log-M. Now, not all D-Log-M is created equally. Remember, when you create a log profile, it's created for each individual sensor. This being a stacked backside illuminated sensor, DJI obviously had to create a log gamma that would work for this particular sensor. And what I found was they created a log gamma that worked fantastic from the 3x lens to the wide lens. And because they were so even, you found that the color shift and the color science matched almost 1-to-1 no matter what lens you were using. I can't say the same about the Mavic 3. Unfortunately, the Mavic 3 has D-Log and then it also has D-Log-M, and it can be very confusing. But on the D-Log-M on the Mavic 3, I always found that overexposing or just trying to expose for the highlights to be a little bit more challenging, and I would never be able to get my highlights 100% correct on D-Log-M on the Mavic 3 Pro. And because of that, what I found myself doing was just shooting in the standard profile, which is fine, but again, when you're trying to do color matching between your Sony camera for the ground and then your drone, it makes it a little bit difficult. Having log profiles means I can use similar LUTs from my Sony camera to my Air 3 and get a good color match between the two, so you really don't know where the drone starts and where the drone ends. And to me, having matching, pleasing colors is really super important when I'm filming a video. So that's something that I really do enjoy about the Air 3 is matching the D-Log-Ms, the gammas work well, and I think the dynamic range is really fantastic for the size of the sensor. So again, it may not be perfect for everybody. I know everybody talks about the Hasselblad color. I don't really shoot normal profiles, so it doesn't matter for me. So having good log profiles is the first thing I look for in a drone. All right, let's talk about the next thing, the third thing I want to talk about, which is the overall loudness of the Air 3. I feel like the Air 3 is a very quiet drone. It's a lot more quiet than the Mavic 3 Pro and the Mavic 3. And when you are in certain situations filming real estate, a lot of times I find myself in these 55 and older communities, and people are nosy. They want to know what's going on. They want to know why you're flying a drone near their house, and they come out, there's conversations, not really confrontations per se, but just conversations that don't need to really happen. So because of that, I like using the Air 3. It's almost inconspicuous. It goes under the radar. Nobody has ever come up to me thus far in 30 plus days of using this and said, hey, what are you doing? Not one single person. I've even taken off and flown from a very busy beach, and I never had anybody say anything to me. So that is something that I do appreciate, is the quietness of this. It's not as quiet as, let's say, the Mini 3 Pro, but it's pretty darn quiet, and it's quiet enough for me to make the switch from the Mavic 3 Pro just because the overall sound of it all. So something worth considering. All right, let's talk about OcuSync 4 because this is something that is big, especially in the city. The Mavic 3 Pro and the Mavic 3 both use OcuSync 3, and while it's not something that you can really gauge, physically, it's something that you do see performance in minimal mannerisms, I would say. I used the new DJI RC with the Air 3, and so far I've had no problems with this. Flying in Tampa, even going around the side of the Sykes building where usually I would get some sort of signal loss or breakup, I've had no problems with the DJI RC2 and the Air 3. This is something that it's not something that I would rely on all the time, but it is something I have noticed that in congested areas where there's a lot more Wi-Fi or possible interference, I see better performance gains out of the Air 3 than I have out of the Mavic 3. And this is just something that will come with updates and new iterations. And I'm sure the next version of Mavic will have OcuSync 4 or maybe even something better like OcuSync 4 Plus, who knows? But this is just something that comes with time of development, and it's to be expected, unfortunately. As new drones come out, new technology is going to be pushed into it. And I will say that OcuSync 4 is better. I'm not necessarily even talking about range, I'm talking about overall penetration. It works well. Now this RC, the experience with this RC has also been pretty good. Now, again, the brightness is nowhere near on point with the RC Pro. It is still good enough for me, and I'm using the word good enough for me because a lot of time I'm flying from inside the cab of my vehicle, or I'm using my hat as a sunshade essentially so I can see my screen. I've never really had an instance where I didn't feel like I couldn't see something. Again, depending on your vision, you may say, hey, 700 nits is not good enough for me. And hey, that's a personal preference. I'm just saying that I've not personally had a problem with using this. I've been able to mitigate the issues quite handedly. My love handles fit, so I can still have my lanyard on here, which is great. And overall, I love the size of it. It charges fast, so no complaints out of this. Yeah, overall, pretty damn good. All right, and then the last thing is I want to talk about battery life. So battery life on this, 45 minutes. When they initially talked about the battery life, I was like, I don't know if it's going to be able to really achieve that type of battery life, but it really truly has. And for me, I feel like I'm getting much more consistent battery life out of the Air 3 than I am out of the Mavic 3 Pro. I don't know why that is, but I do feel like my flight time is a little bit more along the lines of what was advertised. I'm getting anywhere between 40 to 42 minutes of consistent flight time from takeoff to land. That means two things. It means number one, I can stay in the air much longer. And number two, I'm using less of these batteries, meaning that if I have a lot of jobs that day where I have to be up and down, typically I can get by with 1 or 2 batteries for the day, which is pretty awesome. They also charge pretty quickly thanks to that new charging case and plugging them into that 100-watt wall charger. No problems whatsoever. I've been very, very happy overall with the performance of the battery on it. And like I said, no complaints. Now, I'm not saying like the Air 3 is totally amazing and I would never use my Mavic 3 Pro. There is going to always be situations where I'm going to want to use my Mavic 3 Pro, and I still think the image quality is better in certain scenarios. But most of the time when filming real estate, we're filming it during the day, and the reality is, if I stack both of these sensors up next to each other, both of these drones up next to each other, my clients will probably not be able to tell a difference between the two drones. They just look at the final product and what I deliver them, and they are happy. And because they are happy, I'm going to use the drone that, one, makes my job the easiest, two, provides me the least amount of risk when I'm flying, and number three, works the best. And as of right now, that just happens to be the Air 3. Now again, as the next drone comes out, that may change. It's always going to change, and that's something to keep in mind, that none of these videos that we do are definitive. It's always going to change because technology is always getting better. But anyways, I hope this video helps you. I hope my experience with using this over the past couple of weeks shed some light on what you can expect if you're planning on picking this up. And as always, I will see you in the next video. Stay original.
I think I'm playing chess. I see a king, I'm at his neck. I'm 3 steps ahead at every move, now that's a check. Yes, they wanna know my secret, it's because I never slept. All my nightmares of me at 40, life's a wreck. See my dad, he in debt, in my mind.